Hello, hello! Welcome back to Brenda's Books. I'm so happy you're enjoying Sara's War. Today we are on Chapter 57. Here we go. Chapter 57. Incoming. The sound of my cries drown out with the sound of gurgling rippled ocean waves, which rock the aircraft carrier just a bit. I glance up to see a U.S. Navy submarine surface just a few feet away. "Is that them?" asks Molly. "I think so," says Randy, getting to his feet. Not seconds later, a compartment opens, and Chris climbs out of the submarine. Relief pours through my chest. He waves a hand at us, and the three of us wave in return. "First one," Lexy's voice calls. I see Lexy at the top of a ladder from inside the sub. With one arm, she supports a man in a Navy combat uniform. His shaved head sprouts blonde hair, and his long features twist in pain. "Who is that?" Molly whispers. "The Rear Admiral," I reply. The Admiral all but falls on Chris. Chris supports his weight, and the two hobble over the hull of the sub, with the Admiral jumping on one foot, grunting loudly. "He has a broken leg," Chris says as he hands him over to me. I strengthen my stance to hold him up. "Since I didn't know we'd be treating people before the flight, I didn't know to bring medical supplies," I say, glancing at Randy and Molly. "I loaded a huge stash in the Blackhawk," says Randy as he leaps inside the aircraft. "When?" Molly and I say in unison. "When you two were in surgery," Randy calls from inside. "What?" Chris says, glancing back and forth between Molly and me. Randy hops down from the helicopter holding a splint. "The doctor gave the sergeant major a cornea transplant, and Molly assisted." Chris and the Rear Admiral cheer in a unified hoot. I hear more hidden cheers echo out from inside the submarine. "Thanks to both of you," Chris says with a smile. "Next one," Lexy calls. Chris walks back to the stairs and helps a Navy lieutenant onto the hull. "Many broken ribs, I believe," Chris says when he reaches us. "Molly, will you examine him, please?" "Of course," she says. "And Randy, will you put that splint on the Rear Admiral for me? I need to give the captain an exam," I announce, giving Chris a bit of a scolding eye. "Sure thing," says Randy, shifting the Admiral's weight from me to him. I lead Chris a few feet away, and he offers me a sheepish smile. "I know I didn't listen to you, Doctor, but these officers were in trouble, and likely didn't have anyone else besides me who knew where the daggered rose would take them." "I understand," I console, "but I'm worried about you. Will you sit so I can examine your bullet wound?" "Yes, ma'am." Chris sits cross-legged on the carrier's floor. His fingers fumble with his shirt. 2 buttons later, I gasp at the sight of his chest. "Captain, what happened? This is a huge infected mess." Chris grimaces and rubs a hand softly over the wound. "I thought it might be." "Did you take the bullet out and stitch it up yourself?" "Lexy did. You know, soldier style," Chris replies. "And he probably needs a skin graft," Lexy calls from the top of the ladder. "You know, doctor style." I inhale a shaky breath. That's for sure. It's a good thing the hospital is a short flight away. "Injured back! Incoming!" Lexy calls. Molly is still strapping up the lieutenant's torso, and Randy is busy with the Admiral's splint. "Go help him. I'll be fine," Chris says. I leap onto the submarine's hull and jog to the commander who Lexy is assisting up the ladder. With the way he's moving, I know the injury is not too serious, but then he grabs his lower back close to his left hip. "May I?" I ask him, motioning to where he clutches his side. He nods, and I gently prod his back over his kidney, to which he yelps in pain. "Randy, do we have liquid Cipro?" I call over my shoulder. "Yes, I'll go get it," he says readily. "Would you also grab some liquid Doxy for Captain Barnett, please? And some morphine for the Admiral." "You got it," Randy calls as he leaps into the Blackhawk. Molly turns to face me. It's so nice to have someone who already knows which medicine to use. We spent so much time in Bridgetown looking things up. I smile at Molly as I put an arm around the commander and allow him to lean on me as we make our way off the hull. I used to do that all the time, I tell her. What do I have? The commander rasps. A kidney infection. He nods. I knew it had to be something. I don't remember getting injured. Broken foot, or ankle, or big toe, incoming, Lexy calls. I chuckle as I jog back to Lexy to help the Navy ensign onto the hull. Lexy and I stand on either side of him and help him hobble along. How's Jack? Lexy whispers. I shift my gaze to her, but she doesn't return it. He's in a coma, I reply. What? She exclaims, snapping her head around to look at me. The Navy ensign grimaces and bows his head. Lexy obviously yelled into his ear. What's wrong? Chris calls over his shoulder. Randy, who's injecting medicine into Chris's arm, glances up too. I wait for Lexy to respond, but she turns away from me and looks out at the ocean. I was just telling Lexy that Jack's in a coma. Chris's face blanches, but he says nothing. I don't know what to say either. When we reach the carrier, Lexy hands the Navy ensign to Molly and walks several yards away. Molly assists me in wrapping up his ankle, which is broken. Just as we're finishing up with everyone, one more person joins the group. The last person in the world I expect to see. I hardly recognize him as he walks briskly, but a bit clumsily, over the submarine hull. His face is thinner, his skin is tanner, his hair greasier, but his smile bigger. He steps onto the carrier's still floor and walks right up to me. Well, here she is, Dr. Andrews in the flesh, he says, in a slightly slurred voice. Petty Officer Harrison? I ask, hardly believing I'm saying the words. He opens his arms, also in the flesh, thanks to you. I can't believe it! You look so well! Why, thank you, ma'am. I'm a walking miracle, as my lady says. I'll say. How is Mrs. Harrison? She's fine, just fine. Thank you, ma'am. What Petty Officer Harrison has forgotten to mention, Chris says, coming to join us. He slaps Harrison on the shoulder. Is what a miracle he brought to us. Because of his expertise, we were able to find and take down Tennyson's submarine, as well as the rest of the Daggered Rose's lemmings. What? Molly, Randy, and I say in unison. That's right, Chris says. No more traitors on the inside. Not a one. Thank the Lord, the Rear Admiral says from the floor. Indeed, sir, Chris agrees. What about the prisoners we already have in custody, like Ame? Lexy calls over her shoulder. She's still standing away from us with her hands on her hips. Who you somehow convinced to talk to you? That's a must share. Yeah, like Ame, I say, avoiding the invitation. They'll go to trial. Justice will take care of the rest, Chris explains. Lexy scoffs loudly. Ha! There's no justice when an idealist is running the government. Chris lets out a soft sigh. She's still not happy with my choice of political parties. Well, can you blame me? Lexy hollers, spinning around to face us now. You do know that it was only idealists who the Daggered Rose recruited to destroy the Navy, right? And yet they didn't try to recruit me, Chris says. Lexy strides toward us. Well, that's because you're the most honorable, loyal, amazing man on the planet, she says loudly. Chris grins. I'm so happy you agree. Fortunately for you, I still do. Even though you ran off without me to save the Navy officers. Lexy is close to his face now. I didn't want to put you in danger, Chris counters. Are you kidding me? Lexy exclaims, throwing her arms in the air. I am danger! I won't argue with that, Chris says with a smile. Then he pulls Lexy close to him by her waist and kisses her on the lips. Lexy kisses him back. For a moment, we all just stand still and grin over their affection. But then the affection keeps going. And going. I turn to Randy. Let's get everyone in the Black Hawk, shall we? Yes, please, he responds. Molly, Randy, and I assist the wounded into the helicopter. Randy appears as pleased as ever to be our pilot and to have Molly sitting up front with him. He doesn't bother to shut the door closing off the cockpit. The rest of us sit in a small circular space in the back. It's definitely cramped in here, especially since the Rear Admiral has to keep his legs straight. But we'll make it. I squish in between Petty Officer Harrison, who zonks out immediately, and Chris, whose arms are wrapped around Lexy. Lexy's strange interaction with me today worries me. "How did you get Ame to talk to you, Sara?" Lexy says from the other side of Chris. "I saved his son," I say simply. When Lexy doesn't respond, I peer around Chris in an attempt to make eye contact with her, but again she doesn't look at me. She mutters under her breath, which sounds something like, "Even the assassin's son." I lean my head against the wall behind me. Clearly she's upset with me somehow. My heart sinks when I realize what it probably is. "I think you two should talk soon." I jump at Chris's unexpected whisper in my ear. I glance at his face for any clues. "Is that all right?" he asks. "She blames me for what happened to Nate, doesn't she?" I whisper. Surprise smothers Chris's expression. "Not at all, Sara," he says in his deep voice. For a long moment, nobody says a word. The loud rumbling of the aircraft is louder than ever. Suddenly, Lexy jumps to her feet and stands in front of me, meeting my eye. "Seriously, Sara? How could you think that?" Randy calls back to her from the cockpit. "You of all people should know you should sit down." Lexy ignores him. "Sara, how could you think I blame you when it's my fault?" The sudden shouting jolts Harrison awake with a loud snort. "What?" I exclaim. Lexy sits on the floor in front of me. "Nate was under my charge. I was supposed to know where he was and to keep him from unnecessary risk." She throws her hand up in frustration. "I don't even know why he was on that submarine in the first place. He wasn't supposed to be there." "It was my fault," Chris says softly. "What?" Lexy and I both exclaim in unison, turning to look at Chris. "He's the one who jumped in the water and saved me, which is why he got away from the group on the dock, but it's also probably why they caught him coming out of the water while they were taking Jack to the hatch." "Oh, so because you got shot, it's your fault Nate got caught," Lexy snaps. "It's ridiculous, right?" Chris says calmly. "About as ridiculous as you blaming yourself. Or you," he says, shifting his gaze to me. "But I was the one who was with him," I retort. "I thought there was only one enemy to worry about. I didn't know." "You didn't know there was another master spy working closely with Brontes?" Lexy cuts in. "How would you know? Especially since I told you there would be nobody on the island. You trusted me and I let you down. Even with the surprise of having Nate on board, you still managed to get him out. You did everything right. I'm the one who screwed up." Lexy chucks a water bottle at the wall with intense force, then starts weeping openly. The silence is thick. Nobody knows what to say as we all watch Lexy weep. Chris moves to sit beside her, but with Lexy's raised hand, he changes his mind. "If we're playing the blame game, you can blame me," the Rear Admiral says. "I'm the one who didn't see the turncoats right under my nose. None of this would have happened if I had been more aware." "Placing blame does no good," Chris offers. The stuffy silence lingers. "Why was Brontes there?" I whisper. Petty Officer Harrison answers this one. "Brontes was monitoring Tennyson's submarine direction. When he went off course, he decided to take things into his own hands. He messaged Bryce, who apparently was working closely with him. Bryce told him about you being on board. Brontes thought you must be Lexy in a bad disguise." Lexy slams her fist down at that. "But wasn't Brontes one of the original spies we took prisoner?" I ask. "Yes, but somehow he escaped while in transportation to Big Rock. Probably while so many of you were distracted with Ame's son." "How do you know so much of this?" I ask Harrison. He shrugs. "Since I started helping a few days ago, I've been able to intercept some of their private messages to each other. But of course, after I discovered the information, I was taken captive and left to die with these other men. That is, until your friends here came to help." "Look at how many people you saved," I say to Lexy and Chris, "especially after destroying the enemy subs." "Except for Nate," Lexy whispers. He always obeyed orders and worked hard. And he was funny and annoying and flirty. And I always turned him down. Lexy bites her lip, trying not to cry. Well, Nate never liked people who were fake. And that's not you, I console her. He was so persistent that I was constantly telling him I didn't like him. I never told him how much I did like him. She turns to Chris. You know what I mean. Chris nods. Lexy turns to me again. Sara, why is Nate the one who had to pay the price? Tears well up in my eyes. I have to swallow a few times before I answer. Well, Nate always wanted to die a hero. He definitely did, Chris says. All others on the aircraft murmur in agreement. Then there is an unplanned moment of silence. Sara, Lexy says, looking at me directly, is Jack going to make it? I stare back at her. I know what I really, really want to say, but I can't. And that concludes Chapter 57. I hope you're enjoying Sara's War. If you want to find out more about Brenda's books, you can visit brendasbooks.net. Until next time, take care.